This is Mr. Brown's Basement, a channel devoted to repairing, restoring, and modifying vintage electronic gear, and other random stuff. I saw this TV on Facebook Marketplace. I like the mid-century modern design, so I offered to buy it. Pickup was in Fergus, Ontario, which was out of my way. However, I was going to be passing through Arthur, so it wasn't a big detour to swing by Fergus. The sellers had picked it up at an antique market and knew nothing about it. I'd asked them about the manufacturer and model number, and they sent me this picture. It's a Canadian General Electric, and the model number ends in T19. That's not a lot to go on, but I like the 50s style. As it turns out, that's all I have. But if I want a schematic, I need more. Taking a look inside, there's a tube placement diagram which gives me the tube complement. When trying to date a TV like this, I usually focus on the picture tube because the 50s was such a busy time in the picture tube industry. New and improved tubes with bigger and brighter screens and wider deflection angles were being introduced almost every month. The picture tube in this set is a 17AVP4, which is a type I've never seen before. Doing a search on Frank's Electron Tube Data website gives this document from Tungsol. This is a tentative data sheet from April 1955. That places the set at the earliest in the 1956 model year. Checking the tube on Radio Museum, I can see that the tube's popularity peaked between 1956, when it was introduced, and 1958, after which time it was probably replaced by an improved type. What else I can glean, knowing absolutely nothing about this set, is that it has 15 tubes, that is 14 plus the CRT, that the chassis was an N-line design, and that it has only channels 2 to 13, that is, only a VHF tuner. I started my research at Radio Museum, looking for GE TVs from 1955 to 1960, specifically 17-inch sets with 15 tubes, that is 14 plus the CRT, with the N-line chassis. Of the 223 sets it lists, none end in T19, and only two, 17T21 and 17T22, are similar in tube complement. And form factor. Well, that's a start. Let's compare the tubes in mine against the 17T22. Not a bad match, except in the IF circuitry, which doesn't match at all. But of course, this is a Canadian General Electric, or CGE. Their products were different, and of course, fewer of them were made. Doing a search of CGE TVs, well, there's not much and nothing useful. Only earlier sets and sets with more than 20 tubes. Next, I started looking for ads in Canadian newspapers for CGE TVs with a similar form factor and size. The closest set I found is C7T18. It's not exactly the same, but it's close. Still, it doesn't end in T19, so it's not the same TV. Canadian sets are not often in SAMs, but they are often in Radio College of Canada indices. The only index for TVs I found was from 1946 to 1956, and it doesn't list anything that ends in T19. It does mention the C7T18 though, in supplement number 18, but I haven't been able to get my hands on that document yet. So that's how I got here. It's a set similar to 17T22, but it's not a 17T22. And it may be similar to a C7T18, but I don't know. But that's not going to stop me from getting it onto the workbench inside Mr. Brown's basement. If you have any insights, suggestions, or information on this set, please leave it in the comments.
It certainly looks like a Canadian set. After all, it uses Robertson screws made by the P.L. Robertson Company in Milton, Ontario. And they are wonderful. I've taken out the screws that hold in the fiber back and have to pull out a cheater cord. Voila! A 1950s television set. But no identifying information other than that it's from the N line of chassis. At least no information yet. Before I determine whether this TV is worth fixing, I'm going to test the picture tube. That's the single most difficult thing, other than perhaps the flyback transformer, to replace if it's no good. So I'll test that. If it tests at least weak or decent, then this will be my next project. And if the CRT is dead, well, don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe source another picture tube, or maybe it will just become a donor. We'll see. It would be a shame though. I really like the styling. Sometimes you're lucky and the CRT cap comes off nicely. But if you see the socket moving, then stop, because you don't want that to come off. Oh, that's nice. It came off. The worst thing that can happen is this comes off and damages one of the wires that goes from the pins into the tube. Then you have a new problem. But no, that came off really nice. So I'm going to get out the tube tester in a moment, not yet, and give it a test. Here's my CRT tester, and as old as it is not old enough to come equipped with a plug adapter for this CRT. So I have to use the universal adapter, which you see I've clipped onto the pins of the picture tube. Good news so far. The heater is glowing. It's a nice orange, and that's what it should be doing. Okay, it's set for 6.3 volts, which is the filament voltage. We don't have any heater cathode shorts or grid 1 shorts. To test cutoff, go to cutoff and then set this control until I can get that in the box, which it is. And to test emission, emission is good. So this tube is good. Only lifetime emissions test. And I wait until it stops. It's moved into the bad range by about ½ an inch. Hasn't stopped yet. Okay, it stopped there. And that means that it has less than 4 months left. Well, I'll take my chances. Now that I've decided the set is worth the effort to try to fix, I need to take the chassis and separate it from the rest of the set. This set has a plug that allows you to easily disconnect the deflection yoke. Not all sets have that. If it doesn't have it, it can be a real pain to disassemble. I've already taken off the plug for the CRT. I'm going to have to take off terminals for the antenna and speaker clips on. Yeah, just pulls out. And then that leaves the CRT, the high voltage lead, which is in right there. I've had this TV for about 2 weeks, and I haven't turned it on, so I can be fairly certain that the high voltage that might be stored in the picture tube right there has bled off a long time ago. But you can never be too sure. So just as a matter of course, I will attempt to discharge any charge left in the picture tube. First step is to find the high voltage ground. And the high voltage ground is connected to the outside coating of the picture tube, and you can see that there are these metal straps that touch the outside of the picture tube, and it goes to this screw and this wire, which may go to the cabinet, I have no idea. But this is high voltage ground right here. I need to stick an alligator clip on right there. In some sets, it'll just be the case. In some sets, not. It really depends. You just have to look at the coating on the picture tube and see what it connects to. So let me get a clip and connect it to there. By the way, this wire is sticky and I don't know why. Rather gross. There's an alligator clip on ground, and that wire connects to a flat blade screwdriver. The next step, you should only do it with one hand. In fact, old technicians used to say that you had to put your right hand in your pocket. You want to make sure that if an accident happens, the shock is restricted to just your hand, not going from hand to hand, which might go through your heart. Could be a very bad thing. So there's where I need to discharge from. Normally there's a rubber cap that covers it. I don't know what's happened to it, but it's gone. It's going to make things easier. I'm going to take the tip of the screwdriver and touch. Now, if there was a rubber cap to it, I would go underneath the cap and touch. Well, there's nothing happening. If there's any high voltage, I'd hear a snap and I'd see a spark. There's nothing. So it's discharged. So I can safely reach in with my hand and unclip this. Really discharged. And there you have it. I just had to squeeze it so that those two prongs would come through the hole. I had to squeeze them really tight together. But anyway, yeah, it's disconnected. And there is the alter terminal, or the high voltage anode, whatever you want to call it. Next, I'd like to remove the knobs. Usually they pull straight off. Sometimes you'll want to work on the set with it face down. Obviously you have to pad it, but you also have to be mindful that if there's anything sticking out, you don't want to put any weight on it, like the volume controller, the tuner. Anyway, that came off fairly easily. And this is screwed on this side. So much for the knob and the rest. Okay. So that's the fine tuning. And cool knob. Looks like some plastic is gone. Maybe I can paint that later. Make it look a little bit better. This black blob at the back, I think that's some sort of putty that was used to repair this knob. Not a bad job, but I think I can improve on it. Certainly by painting that and maybe adding some more putty inside to give it extra added support. The chassis is held in by two screws underneath. I've just discovered that one of the two screws is missing. I would have been tempted to turn it on its side, but the last thing I want to happen is for the chassis to slide and perhaps neck the picture tube, which would be a very bad thing. So I'm going to carefully balance it on the workbench and pull out the screw, and then maybe even source another screw so it can be put back together properly. And it's out. This is the first time I've had to look at it. Awfully dusty, which is normal.
This finned orange thing is a selenium stack rectifier, and it needs to be replaced. That selenium stack is actually two rectifiers, which comprise a voltage doubler along with two large electrolytic capacitors.
For some reason the tuner is pried open, don't know. Some big electrolytics that will have to go. They will be replaced by capacitors on a terminal strip, which is much neater. This sandbar resistor, or fusistor, whatever you want to call it, has corrosion on the legs. And usually that's a sign that it's on the way out. So this resistor is going to get replaced. Fusistor is just a portmanteau of fusible resistor. It was intended to blow if something really bad happened. This is the high voltage cage right over here. The high voltage rectifier will be in here. And for some reason it's been opened or partially opened. Okay. Smells like an old set. First thing to do is dust it off outside. Some wires get sticky because there was or still is tape on them. But some wires get sticky because the plastic is breaking down. You can see that blue goo oozing out from the end of this wire. This wire would have to be replaced. Here's the underside of the chassis. After I'm done, there should be a lot more space because the new capacitors will be much smaller. These, you would think, would not be paper, but they're paper. These are paper. This is a bumblebee capacitor. It's paper. Another bumblebee in there. A few electrolytics. Funny that they would put two in parallel like that. But there really isn't that much work. Just replacing the capacitors and testing the resistors as I go. But the first step was to test the tubes. A funny thing happened to me when I removed the high voltage rectifier. The wax on the outside of the flyback transformer was so brittle that it came away. It's just held on by that wire now. That requires an immediate repair, and I have some goo somewhere that I can use on that. You can't just use anything, you need something high voltage. This will serve as a band-aid for now, and it will prevent the high voltage wire from ripping. Also, once it's cured, it is a very, very good insulator and will not allow arcing from this point to the rest of the high voltage cage. There's going to be at least 10 or 15,000 volts there, so it would want to arc given the choice. Well, quite a surprise with the tubes. All of them are good, except for the horizontal output, which is borderline. That would cause a shrunken picture or low high voltage. And this 3CB5, BC5, sorry, that's in the tuner, which would mean it might have very poor sensitivity. But everything else seems to be okay, including the high voltage rectifier. That's unusual.
I'm afraid we'll have to end it here. I've got an order of electrolytic capacitors on the way and they haven't arrived yet. I hope you'll join me once they have for the next stage of this repair. In the meantime, if you recognize this Canadian General Electric TV ending in T19, please leave me a comment. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. My entire research and production crew of myself will be grateful.